Reaction then from Stefanie Fick from Outa, or the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, making time to come in to talk to us this morning. The organisation's executive head of accountability. And as the executive head of accountability, Stefanie, good morning to you. What do you make of the booting out, essentially, from the National Assembly and their voting on the suspended public protector, soon to be the former public protector? You agree, yay or nay?
I don't think it came as a surprise. No. I mean, there were some MPs that still voted no, but I don't think it came as a surprise. I think the charges that were levelled against her was quite serious. It's not about an qualified or unqualified audit. It is about her being fit for office. And I think the complaints that we listened to, the evidence that we listened to in the inquiry was just too much.
Did she do anything right?
I suppose she was in the office for 7 years. And I think some of the MPs had the problem that, it's literally a month before her contract comes to an end, a natural end. So I have to believe that there was something she did right. I mean, someone mentioned the fact that there was thousands of other reports. We must just remember that she's got an office. But if you've listened to the investigation, I think what's also tragedy is that apparently the people inside of the office also had a rough time, which all just points to that this was the right decision.
So now, how does one look at the Public Protector's Office going forward? As I mentioned, the soon-to-be outgoing former public protector, suspended public protector, going to be replaced by someone new, obviously. How much reputational damage from a legal perspective, and this is where I'm asking to put your legal hat on for a second, optically, how much damage has this done to the credibility of the Public Protector's Office? I
think an enormous damage. Not only is she a Chapter 9 institution, which comes from our constitution, but also from an advocate point of view. And that I think it will take time. The new incumbent of that office will have a hard time building the trust again. Because I think, like with, nowadays with government and with politicians, there's such a huge trust deficit that it will take time for the office to, instill the confidence that it is, there's no political interference, that we are fit and proper to do the investigations. More importantly, that we are going to do proper investigations. Because at the end, what is her job? Is to look after, all of us, ordinary people, against the state. In a nutshell, the maladministration in the state. So it will take, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it will take time for the new incumbent to just build that trust and show us that, again, the investigations is done in the best interest of the complainants in South Africa and not some, power out there.
Well, let's talk about the power out there for a moment, because some criticism during the interviews for the new public protector position opening up as well. It's an appointment by the president and by the presidency. The interviews are done by MPs, heir to politicians. Yet, to your point, the public protector is there for the public. Some are suggesting the mere fact that interviews are done by politicians and appointed by the president, you cannot not have political interference, because at very least you're going to have political oversights. What do you make of how these appointments are being made?
I do think that there was public participation. I mean, we got the nomination list, and then there was deliberations, and the candidate was then sent to the president. But I do think that public participation can be more, maybe more intense, maybe listen more to the public. On the other hand, what I do think we've been seeing is that the public is very reluctant to get involved in any public participation.
So how many do you think? Because even as Outa, you often have these public participation. A well-known case, which I think even everyone remembers Wayne Duvenage from, is the e-tolls.
Yes.
There was public participation there. That fell over because there wasn't enough public participation. Yes. Does it work in our country?
I think people it's like with voting. Why don't we have more people voting for what should happen in South Africa? Is it maybe a question of, doesn't matter, if we do participate, will our views really be taken into account? And unfortunately, I think what we've seen is that in some instances not. with choosing the next public protector is going to be a difficult process. You will not know what that person will do, and unfortunately we have the history. Is that was Advocate Mkhwebane the worst candidate at the time? No. But the criticism against the process, I think, is that it's happened so quickly. You know, someone said during the interviews that we should not pick the perfect candidate who applied. We should pick the perfect candidate in general. Right. So there should be enough time that if we have candidates, that's okay, but maybe it's not the right candidate, that we can start the process all over again and look for that public protector that will really fulfill constitutional duties.
And when you now look at the office moving forward, because one of the main tipping points, and still a point of contestation, Stefanie, was the Phala report. Once that hit the headlines and the Office of the Public Protector had to start investigating that, already the criticism had come in that it was going to be one-sided, she was going to favour the President because appointed by the President. Where, as a Chapter 9 institution, should that separation come in? As the public, how do we know that there's actually separation, regardless of what might be happening behind closed doors?
You probably will never know, but I think it is the reports, it is the recommendations that will show you to what extent the investigation was done properly. I mean, if you look at the Estina, which was one of the complaints.
The dairy farm.
The dairy farm. I mean, how many complainants were interviewed? And that is the type of investigation that it was just not done properly. And that's part of why she is now found unfit to be the public protector. So it is in the level of the high quality reports, getting the impression that that the investigators in the public protector's office went out of their way, had the necessary resources, and that in fact, there were no interference directly from the public protector herself. The whole how you run your office, everything comes from the top. So if you're going to instill fear in your employees, then obviously you're going to have people that's not willing to participate.
As I start saying goodbye to you, next for the outgoing suspended, soon-to-be former public protector, I have to try and remember all those proper ways of saying it, is if the President does rubber stamp this recommendation by Parliament and she is booted out, she's removed from her office, would she lose all her benefits from having served in office? Because there's an argument, Stefanie, that's why she's fighting so hard to run to the end of her term, because then she'll get all the packages, and I don't know what a public protector gets. I'm going to mention things like pensions and benefits. Is that why she's fighting this so hard? A. And B, if the President were to remove her and agree with Parliament, would she lose that? Is that how this works? Do you know?
Yes. She will lose her pension, and then there's also a payment. We were talking previously about maybe 8 million. I think in her instance it's 10 million that she will lose those benefits. The President actually does not have a choice. I think the Constitution says he must remove her. If 2/3 of the National Assembly decides to remove her, then he must remove her. So there is going to be, but if you take into account, I mean, I've heard so many numbers. At some point, 50 million, 60 million, 160 million, she's cost taxpayers, by just fighting, and in some people's view, just, not winnable cases, and just kept on going.